Crimson champions of the people and peerless duelists, the Red Mages of Eorzea are those who would take hold of the legacy of the past, and from it chart a new course for the good of all. Magic wielders who through the use of black and white magic combined wreak controlled destruction on their foes. They are no less unparalleled with the blade. Acting as champions for the people, their ruby attire has become a herald of deliverance for those in want of aid. But first we must know the road that led us to our modern champions in red. The political landscape of Eorzea during the later days of the 5th Astral Era made the continent rife with conflict. Amdapor, a nation of white magic users, stood proud, while Mach, a much smaller nation of black magic practitioners, was on the rise, going from small nation-state to conquering hegemon in a brief period of time, using the art of the Black Mage and through the summoning of Voidsent. Amdapor, alarmed at the ascendant Mach, reacted by further developing its own form of magic that used similar principles to heal and strengthen instead of merely destroying, creating the practices of the modern white mage in the process. Eventually, this magical arms race, and the war that spawned from it, named the War of the Magi, would destroy the land itself and every nation standing upon it by bringing about the 6th Umbral Calamity, a worldwide flood that saw the end of many peoples and many nations. During the 6th Umbral Calamity, those who were able fled to any high ground they could find, some following a comet which led them to the mountains of Girabanya. Many of these refugees were from Mach and Amdapor, and what used to be sworn enemies buried their past in order to forge a better future. Though the arts of the white mage and black mage were willfully forgotten, the use of black and white magic lingered on when the surviving practitioners of both arts joined together to create red magic, a balancing of the scales and a philosophy based in the harmony of two poles. They forged a new way forward and became the very first red mages. A part of the fundamental nature of the white and black mage was the focus on drawing aether from the surrounding environment to weave magics, instead of from within themselves. Though a magic user's environment may be suffused with aether in comparison to the more modest reservoirs within their own bodies, the drawing upon external aether has two drawbacks. One is throwing the natural etheric rhythms of their surroundings out of balance, and the other is that without exceeding caution, a spell user may be overcome by the flow of aether and harm or kill themselves or others unintentionally. In order to avoid past mistakes, a red mage instead only draws upon the aether from within their own bodies. This store of aether is much smaller than their surroundings, however, and so to make up for this, they developed techniques based on the use of their catalysts to accelerate one's mana from within. A way to think of it would be that a black mage, with huge sums of aether they can pull from their surroundings, is able to throw a large stone, but only slowly, while a red mage, with a much smaller source of mana, is only able to throw a small stone, but using their techniques, flings it at great speed. Both contain a large amount of force, but their methodologies are fundamentally different. It's said, civilization can be defined by its tools. So too can a job by its weapons and armor. The Red Mage's dueling arm and duelist's attire are, as with many jobs, a product of a storied and at times fraught history. The dueling arm, a combination of single-handed dueling sword and ethereal catalyst, has a legacy that dates back hundreds of years. Regarding the first part of the dueling arm, before plate armor was commonplace, most soldiers wore heavy jackets of chainmail, which provided excellent protection against slashing weapons. However, a thin edgeless blade like that of a rapier was wildly successful at piercing through the mail, and so such weapons became commonplace for knights as supplementals to their primary arms, to the point that over time they became symbolic of knighthood in and of themselves. Their light weight and ubiquity made them often first weapons to hand, and so too became associated with dueling, leading to the art of fencing. Duelist swords break down into a few fundamental designs: the tuck, rapier, foil, deegan, small sword, and far eastern blades, each with different temperaments and history. The tuck, with its double-edged side profile flaring to a widened foible. The rapier, with its thin body and slender frame, crafted specifically for dueling. The foil, with its blunted edges making it designed for piercing rather than slashing. The deegan, with its twisted blade and arrowhead-like tip. The small sword, with its traditional profile making it akin to a short sword. And those exotic dueling blades of the Far East. In the past, crafted from tales of faraway Eorzean shores, and newer designs crafted by the demand for rapier-like weapons, coming from the influx of Western adventurers. It was an Ishgardian forefather, the Eorzean Count Ganelon, who brought the art of fencing to the nascent Red Mages in the early days of the 6th Astral Era, teaching them the art while taking refuge in Girabanya, finding companionship with those Eorzean who had heraldry from Mach and Amdapor. He was ultimately branded a traitor by his Curthian kin for revealing closely guarded techniques to outsiders. His sacrifice, however, laid the foundation for what the Crimson Duelists would later become, and helps explain why two disparate groups share a historical armament. Despite the Magi and Amdaporian Eorzean roots of the duelist sword, the rapier nor any of its brothers became popular in the modern, predominantly Eorzean city-state of Ishgard. Most likely due to their ineffective nature against dragonkind, a conflict their forefathers would not have need considered. So tied is the identity of a Red Mage to their sword, that their blades are enshrined as a symbol of their legacy in the tomb of the errant sword just outside Alamigo. The other half of the dueling arm is the etheric catalyst, by which Red Mages channel their aether through, as both a momentary reservoir and accelerator. Its addition by the Red Mages of Girabanya to the dueling swords of Eld completes the distinguishing weapon of the Crimson Duelist. Part and parcel to the sanguine silhouette of the Red Mage is the duelist's attire, eschewing the robes common to other magic users, in lieu of armor based on traditional Eorzean swordsmen, to allow for the rapid mobility required by their techniques. However, like other magic users, the elongated and flowing aspects of their attire is to allow space for arcane geometries to be woven into their clothes, allowing for better etheric control and manipulation. The duelist panoply is no less flamboyant, containing stylistic elements of both Magi and Amdaporian clothing, as well as a specific vivid crimson-hued cloth, setting them apart both in travels and on the battlefield. The moniker of the duelist, both in their attire and title, comes from the Red Mage's willingness to fling themselves into battle, acting as both righteous champion and accomplished combatant. Lacking a traditional guild in modern times, the history of the Red Mage and Red Magic is ill accounted for, both from the chaos in the days following the 6th Umbral Calamity, and the multiple occasions on which the Red Mages have been nearly wiped out. What we do know is their forming in the early part of the 6th Astral Era, and the subsequent creation of Red Magic, as well as the adoption of dueling techniques. Sometime thereafter, as the Order became more solidified, did they create the Ziggurat of the Girabanyan Peaks, in order to help calm and still the ethereal upheaval present from the 6th Umbral Calamity's flood. In those days too, did they ban all former practices of Mach and Amdapor, and specifically any and all practices relating to Voidsent, going out of their way to destroy as many abominations wrought by their forebears as possible. At some point, for many hundreds of years, the art of the Red Mage was lost, only to be revived in the later years of the 6th Astral Era by a band known as the Crimson Duelists. Foremost among them were the likes of the Mikote, Jruntia. The Crimson Duelists helped lead the charge in the waning years of the 6th Astral Era to free Alamigo from its tyrannical Mad King Theodric, and were successful, only to realize too late that they had created the perfect opportunity for Garlemald to intercede, and annex a weakened Alamigo. At the same moment this took place, the Crimson Duelists were betrayed by one of their own, and the Red Mages were all but wiped out. For 20 years did it seem their fate was to fade away into the annals of history yet again. However, a spark of hope remained, and there are those who kept the flame alive, and some few who have taken up the practice anew to champion the Crimson Magics yet once more. Despite the setbacks of recent years, the fervor of the Red Mages has not waned, and those new practitioners who take up the art carry with them the weight and hopes of those who came before. The torch that is the heart of the Red Mage will yet be passed on to new generations, striving so that the red art may herald a dawn, without the need for blade or for blood. This content was brought to you by the Eorzean Archives. If you enjoyed this video, help us please the 12 by leaving a like and subscribing for new content every Thursday, and comment down below with any topic you'd like to see our archons cover in the future. For even more content, discussion, and exclusives, please check out our Discord and consider supporting us on Patreon.